The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and printer toner, the kind that sticks to your clothes for the rest of the day. Maya's phone wouldn't stop vibrating against the glass table. 1 buzz. 2. 3. She stared at the screen without picking it up, like the numbers might change if she waited long enough. Across from her, the billionaire family's lawyer was smiling too hard. Their daughter, maybe 19, maybe older, leaned toward her brother and whispered something with a little laugh. Both of them looked straight at Maya, then at the small gold nameplate in front of her, Maya Bennett, client representative. Maya's cheeks burned. Not because she was embarrassed about her suit or her hair. Because she knew that look. The look people saved for the wrong person in the right room. Behind her, her dad's voice went calm and low. "Put the phone on speaker," he said. Maya swallowed. Her thumb finally moved. The call connected, and a shaky voice filled the room. "Mr. Bennett. I'm so sorry. The bank pulled the funding. They said they can't touch this deal anymore. Effective immediately." The billionaire father's smile dropped. Like somebody cut a string. And Maya realized, with a strange cold clarity, that whatever had just happened wasn't an accident. Maya lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in South End, Charlotte, where the rent climbed every year like it had somewhere better to be. The building looked sleek from the outside, glass, steel, clean lines, but the hallways always smelled faintly like someone's takeout and someone else's dog. She was 21, a senior at UNC Charlotte, and the kind of tired that didn't go away with sleep. The kind you carried in your shoulders. The kind that made your thoughts feel like they were wrapped in cotton. Her friends thought she had it easy. They didn't say it out loud, not directly. They didn't have to. It came out in little jokes. "Must be nice," one girl in a group project said once, smiling like it was harmless. "Your dad could buy this whole campus if he wanted." Maya had smiled back because that's what you did when you didn't want to turn your life into a debate in front of a whiteboard. She didn't explain that her dad didn't buy things to prove points. She didn't explain that he still drove the same black Lexus he'd had since she was in middle school, because he hated waste and didn't care what anybody thought. She didn't explain the part that sat under everything, the part that made her stomach tight even on calm days. Her dad wasn't just rich. He was visible. Elijah Bennett was one of those people who got written about as if he was a headline, not a person. Black CEO. Self-made. The kind of story that made people either proud or suspicious, sometimes both at once. Maya had watched it happen her whole life. Compliments that sounded like questions. Praise that felt like a test. He ran a logistics and software company that started with 3 people in a rented office and grew into something that moved real products across real highways. Not hype. Not luck. Work. Decisions. Consequences. Maya had grown up around conference calls and calendar invites and the quiet hum of pressure that never shut off. When she was little, she thought all dads took business calls in the grocery store parking lot. She thought all moms learned to read stress like weather. Her mom, Denise, worked in public health and had a steady way of speaking that made people feel safe without even noticing. When Maya was 16, her mom got sick. Not the dramatic kind, not the kind that makes a movie out of your life. The slow kind. Appointments. Tests. Waiting rooms. New routines. Her mom got better, mostly. Better the way people get better when their lives still have new rules. Even now, Maya kept a note in her phone with things her mom shouldn't forget. Water, medication, call the doctor if the dizziness came back. It made Maya feel like she was holding a corner of the family together with a thumbtack. On the day of the meeting, Maya woke up before her alarm. She lay in bed and listened to the city wake up through the thin window. A siren far away. Someone's car door slamming. The soft thump of a neighbor's music through the wall. Her stomach felt hollow. Not hungry. Just empty. Her dad had asked her to sit in on the negotiation as a client representative. It sounded official. It sounded like an opportunity. Her dad said it would be good experience, that she'd learn how people moved in rooms like that. Maya had said yes because she didn't want to disappoint him. Because she didn't want to disappoint herself. Because she wanted to prove she belonged in the world that everyone assumed had been handed to her. But she also said yes because she was scared to say no. Lately, she'd been scared of a lot of things. Scared that her friends only tolerated her. Scared she'd never earn anything on her own. Scared that she'd become a symbol instead of a person. She got dressed in silence, checking her reflection in the bathroom mirror like she was trying to read herself. Her suit wasn't expensive, not compared to the people she was about to sit across from, but it fit. Her hair was pulled back neatly. Her nails were short, clean. She looked like someone who tried. In the kitchen, her mom was sitting at the table with a mug of tea, one hand around it like she needed the warmth to stay steady. The morning light made soft lines on her face. "You good?" her mom asked. Maya hesitated, then gave the version of the truth that wouldn't worry anybody. "Yeah. Just nervous." Her mom nodded like she understood what Maya wasn't saying. Nerves are normal. But don't let them convince you you're not allowed to be there. Maya swallowed. "I hate that I'm always thinking about what people think." Her mom's eyes stayed on her. "That's because people have been thinking out loud about you since you were little. You didn't choose that." Maya looked down at the table. The wood had a small chip near the edge, and she traced it with her finger. Her mom leaned forward. "Listen to me. Your dad built his life the hard way. But that doesn't mean your life has to be hard to be real. You still get to be a person. Not a lesson." Maya felt something behind her eyes, like tears lining up but not falling. She hated crying. Not because she thought it was weak, but because once it started, it was hard to stop. And she didn't have time to stop. Her dad picked her up at 9 in the Lexus. He was wearing a navy suit and a tie that looked simple until you noticed how clean every detail was. He looked calm, but Maya knew him. His calm was a decision. "How you feeling?" he asked as they merged onto I-277. "Fine," Maya said automatically. He glanced at her. "That's not an answer." Maya exhaled. "I'm just tired of being watched." Her dad nodded once, like he'd heard that before. "Yeah, I get it." They drove through the city, past bank buildings and construction cranes and a billboard advertising luxury condos that most people couldn't afford. Charlotte looked shiny from a distance. Up close, you could see the cracks like anywhere else. The meeting was in a tower with a lobby that smelled like expensive perfume and polished stone. The billionaire family's company had sent a car service, like an unspoken reminder of who usually ran the show. In the elevator, Maya's phone buzzed. A text from her friend Tasha. "Good luck. Don't let them get in your head." Maya stared at it. The words should have helped. Instead, they made her chest tighten, because it meant Tasha already expected them to try. When the doors opened, a woman in a headset met them with a practiced smile. "This way, Mr. Bennett." "Anne." "Maya, right." Maya nodded, even though the woman's eyes flicked down to her name like it was a detail that needed verifying. The conference room was cold. Not just the temperature. The energy. The kind of cold that made you feel like you should apologize for taking up space. The billionaire father, Richard Hale, stood to shake Elijah's hand, smiling like a politician. His wife sat with perfect posture, her necklace catching the light every time she turned her head. 2 adult kids sat nearby, dressed like they belonged in magazines. Maya could feel their eyes on her before anyone even spoke. The Hale son, Preston, looked at Maya's nameplate, then at her face, and smirked like he'd found a joke he didn't have to tell out loud. The Hale daughter leaned in, whispering something, laughing softly into her manicured hand. Maya's throat went tight. She kept her face neutral because she'd been trained her whole life to act like nothing touched her. But it did touch her. It touched the part of her that had sat in classrooms where teachers praised her articulate answers in a way they didn't praise other kids. It touched the part of her that had learned to smile while people made assumptions about her father, her money, her place in the world. Elijah didn't react. He started the meeting like it was any other Tuesday. Calm questions. Clear terms. Numbers on paper. Reality, not ego. Halfway through, as they talked about timelines and performance guarantees, Maya's phone began to vibrate against the table again. Once. Twice. Then a third time, harder, like the person calling couldn't afford to wait. Maya's heart started to race. She glanced at her dad. He didn't look at her phone. He looked at her face. His voice stayed even. "Put the phone on speaker." The room paused, like everyone was annoyed at being interrupted by something ordinary. Maya's thumb hovered. Her hand felt shaky. She could feel the Hale daughter watching her like she was hoping Maya would mess up. Maya swallowed, hit accept, and set the phone down. A voice came through, tense and apologetic. "Mr. Bennett. I'm sorry. We just got confirmation. The financing partner pulled out. They're backing away from the transaction entirely. Effective immediately." For a second, nobody moved. Then Richard Hale's smile fell apart. "What?" he snapped, too loud for a room like this. He looked at his lawyer like the lawyer had betrayed him. "That's not possible. We had assurances." The lawyer's face went pale. Papers shifted. A pen rolled slightly on the table and made a tiny clack that sounded weirdly loud. Maya's stomach dropped, not with triumph, but with shock. Deals didn't just collapse. Not deals this big. Not deals that had been treated like they were inevitable. Elijah didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just sat there, steady, his eyes on Richard Hale like he was looking at a grown man who'd never been told no. Maya watched the Hale kids, too. Their expressions changed fast. Confident to confused. Mocking to afraid. Like they'd been reminded, suddenly, that money didn't always protect you from consequences. Maya's phone was still on speaker. The voice continued, "Careful now. They cited reputational risk and pending review of internal communications. That's all they told us." Richard Hale's jaw tightened. Internal communications. Elijah's voice stayed calm. "We're done here." The room erupted into overlapping questions, but Elijah stood up, gently placing his hand on Maya's shoulder. Not controlling. Grounding. As they walked out, Maya's legs felt weird, like she'd run a race without realizing it. Her face stayed composed until the elevator doors closed. Then she let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "What just happened?" she whispered. Elijah looked at the elevator numbers as they lit up one by one on the way down. "I'll explain," he said quietly. "But first, I need you to understand something." He finally turned to her, his eyes tired in a way she recognized. "Those people weren't laughing because you did something wrong. They were laughing because they're used to rooms that never challenge them. Today, reality challenged them." Maya nodded, but her chest still felt tight. In the lobby, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email notification. Subject line, "Urgent, Hale Group, Compliance Inquiry." Maya stared at it, her fingers cold. Her dad held the door open for her, and the winter air hit her face like a reset button. Cars passed. People walked by carrying coffee and backpacks like nothing in the world had changed. Maya stepped onto the sidewalk, and the city kept moving. But inside her, something had shifted. Not into a happy ending. Not into a neat lesson. Just into a new, sharp question she couldn't ignore anymore. Was she going to keep letting other people decide what she was worth? The drive home was quiet in a way that felt heavier than silence. The city blurred past the passenger window, grey buildings and winter trees smearing together like Maya couldn't quite focus her eyes long enough to separate them. Her dad didn't turn on the radio. He didn't talk. He just drove, steady hands on the wheel, like the road itself was something he trusted more than words right now. Maya kept replaying the moment in the conference room. The smirk. The whisper. The sudden collapse. She didn't feel victorious. That surprised her. She felt unsettled, like the ground under her had shifted but she hadn't figured out how to stand on it yet. When they pulled into the apartment complex, her dad finally spoke. "You don't have to come to the office this week," he said. "Go back to school. Be normal." Maya let out a short laugh. "I don't even know what that is." He glanced at her, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Neither do I. But it's still worth trying." Upstairs, her mom was sitting on the couch with a blanket over her legs, the TV on low. She looked up as soon as the door opened, her eyes scanning Maya's face first, then Elijah's. "Well?" she asked. Elijah set his keys down. "Deal's dead." Her mom blinked once. "Dead, bad dead or necessary dead," he said. Her mom nodded slowly, like she understood the difference without needing details. She looked back at Maya. "You okay?" Maya hesitated. I don't know. That night, Maya lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her phone face down beside her. Notifications kept lighting it up faintly. Group chat messages. A couple of missed calls. She ignored all of it. Her mind kept circling the same question her dad had stirred up. What was she actually worth when nobody was watching her last name? The next morning, she skipped class. Not out of rebellion. Out of exhaustion. She pulled on a hoodie, grabbed her backpack, and walked without a plan. The air was cold but clean, the kind that made your lungs feel awake. She ended up at a bus stop she didn't normally use, one tucked between a closed laundromat and a small grocery store with faded signs in the window. She sat on the metal bench and pulled her sleeves over her hands. A few minutes later, a man sat down at the other end of the bench. Late 40s, maybe. Work boots. A jacket with a company logo stitched on the chest. He smelled faintly like coffee and motor oil. They didn't look at each other at first. Maya scrolled through her phone without really seeing anything. The man sighed, long and tired. Bus always late when you actually need it, he said, not directly to her. Just out loud. Maya nodded before she realized she was responding. Yeah. He glanced over, offering a half smile. You heading to work or school? School, Maya said. Then added, because it felt honest, usually. He nodded. That usually does a lot of work. She huffed a small laugh. It really does. They sat in silence again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Just human. After a moment, he said, you look like someone who's carrying a lot. Maya stiffened slightly. Normally, a comment like that would have made her shut down. But something about the way he said it, flat, not invasive, made it land differently. Is it that obvious? She asked. He shrugged. I work maintenance at the hospital down the road. You learn to notice faces. People think their stress is invisible. It's not. Maya swallowed. Does it ever get easier? He considered that. Some things do. Some things don't. But you get better at deciding which ones deserve your energy. She looked at him then. How? He smiled, tired but kind. I'll tell you when I figure it out. The bus arrived with a hiss of air brakes. He stood, adjusting his jacket. Good luck, he said, stepping toward the door. Whatever it is. Maya watched him climb on, felt something small loosen in her chest. It wasn't advice. It wasn't a solution. It was just a moment where nobody expected anything from her. She didn't get on that bus. Instead, she walked. She walked past the grocery store, past a row of small houses with porches and cracked steps, past people living lives that had nothing to do with boardrooms or headlines. She felt oddly grounded, like she'd stepped back into her body after floating above it for too long. Her phone buzzed. This time, she checked it. A voicemail notification. From a number she recognized but hadn't listened to in weeks. Her academic advisor. Maya stopped walking and leaned against a brick wall, the cold seeping through her hoodie. She pressed play. Maya, hi. I know you've been busy. I just wanted to follow up. You mentioned feeling unsure about your direction. I wanted you to know, there's no penalty for changing your path. You don't owe anyone a version of yourself that doesn't fit anymore. Call me when you're ready. The message ended. Maya stared at the wall in front of her. The bricks were uneven, some darker than others, like they'd been patched over time instead of replaced. She thought about how often she'd ignored that voicemail. How often she'd told herself she didn't have time to question anything. How much effort she'd put into not disappointing people who hadn't even asked her what she wanted. When she got home later, her mom was in the kitchen, carefully chopping vegetables. You walk all day? Her mom asked. Yeah, Maya said. I needed it. Her mom nodded. Good. They cooked together in silence, the sound of the knife hitting the cutting board steady and real. No one mentioned the deal. No one mentioned the looks in the conference room. After dinner, Maya sat on her bed and opened her laptop. She pulled up her course schedule. She stared at it for a long time. Then, slowly, she opened a blank document. She typed a sentence. Deleted it. Typed another. Finally, She wrote something simple. I don't know what I want yet. But I know I want it to be mine. Her chest tightened, not with fear this time, but with resistance. Change sounded good in theory. In reality, it meant letting go of certainty. It meant disappointing expectations that felt older than she was. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Tasha. You okay? Everyone's talking about your dad's deal blowing up. Maya stared at the message. For the first time, she didn't feel the need to explain or defend or correct the story. She typed back. I'm okay. Just figuring some things out. She set the phone down and leaned back against her pillow. Outside, the city hummed on. Cars passed. Somewhere, someone laughed. Somewhere else, someone worried about rent, or health, or a future that didn't look the way they'd planned. Maya closed her eyes. She wasn't fixed. Nothing was resolved. But for the first time in a long while, she felt like she'd made contact with herself. And that small connection felt like the beginning of something she wasn't ready to name yet. The next few days felt slower than they should have. Like time was dragging its feet just to see what Maya would do. She went back to campus, but she didn't feel present there anymore. She sat in lectures and copied notes she didn't read later. She nodded during conversations without really listening. Everything felt slightly out of sync, like she was watching her own life through a screen with a small delay. People treated her differently after the deal collapsed. Not openly. Subtly. A classmate asked, So, is your dad okay? In a tone that suggested curiosity more than concern. Another joked about rich people problems, laughing like it was harmless. Maya smiled when she was supposed to. She always did. But something inside her was tightening. At night, she lay awake replaying old moments she'd pushed aside for years. Teachers praising her for being mature. Adults telling her how lucky she was. Friends assuming she'd never understand stress because she'd never had to worry about money. They were wrong, but correcting them always felt pointless. Explaining yourself over and over made you feel smaller, not clearer. One afternoon, she sat alone in the campus library, her laptop open but untouched. Around her, keyboards clicked. Pages turned. Someone coughed softly. Life moved in quiet, academic ways. Maya stared at the blinking cursor on the screen. Why was it so hard to choose herself? The answer came faster than she expected. Because choosing herself meant admitting she didn't want what everyone assumed she wanted. It meant stepping out of a story that made other people comfortable. It meant risking disappointment, her parents, her friends, maybe even her own. She thought about her dad. About how calm he'd been in that conference room. About how people mistook his restraint for weakness until reality proved otherwise. She wondered if he'd ever wanted something different, once. If he'd ever felt trapped by expectations too. That night, she waited until after dinner, until the dishes were done and the TV murmured quietly in the background. Her parents sat on opposite ends of the couch, her mom with her legs tucked under her dad scrolling through emails on his tablet. Maya stood in the doorway longer than she needed to. I need to talk to you, she said. Her dad looked up immediately. Her mom muted the TV. Okay, her mom said gently. Maya sat on the edge of the armchair, hands clasped together so tightly her fingers ached. I don't think I want to keep doing what I'm doing, she said. The words sounded small once they were out. School-wise. Career-wise. I don't know. Her dad leaned back slightly, studying her face. Not judging. Reading. Her mom waited. Maya pushed on. I feel like I'm living a life that makes sense on paper but not inside my head. And I'm scared that if I stop or change direction, I'll waste everything you worked for. The room was quiet. The refrigerator hummed softly from the kitchen. Her dad set the tablet down. Maya, he said, slow and careful, you are not an investment portfolio. Her throat tightened. I know, she said. But it doesn't feel like that sometimes. Her mom reached over and took her hand. Sweetheart, do you know how many times your father changed his mind before he found what worked? Maya shook her head. More than he'll admit, her mom said, smiling faintly. Her dad exhaled. I didn't build my life so you'd feel trapped by it. I built it so you'd have choices. Maya looked at him, really looked at him. Not as the CEO. Not as the headline. Just as her dad. The lines around his eyes. The tired kindness she'd always known but rarely focused on. "Then why do I feel like I'm failing?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was honest in a way that surprised her. "Because the world has been measuring you since before you were old enough to understand the scale." That landed hard. Maya felt tears rise, not dramatic, not overwhelming. Just steady. "I don't know what I want," she said again, softer now. "And I hate that I don't know." Her mom squeezed her hand. "Not knowing isn't a flaw. Pretending you know when you don't, that's what breaks people." Later that night, Maya sat alone in her room, the conversation echoing in her head. Relief mixed with fear in a way that made her chest feel tight. Support didn't erase uncertainty. It made it louder. Because now, she couldn't hide behind obligation. She opened her laptop and pulled up old files she hadn't touched in years. A half-written essay. A folder of photos she'd taken on her phone and edited late at night when she couldn't sleep. Notes from a community project she'd volunteered with freshman year, helping local small businesses get online during the pandemic. She'd loved that work. The realness of it. Sitting with people who didn't care who her dad was. People who just needed help. Why had she stopped? Because it didn't sound impressive enough. The realization made her stomach drop. She closed the laptop and pressed her palms into her eyes. Why did validation matter so much? She thought about the Hale kids laughing. About how quickly their confidence collapsed when money stopped protecting them. About how fragile superiority really was. She thought about the man at the bus stop, tired and honest, offering no advice but still offering presence. She thought about the voicemail from her advisor, the words she'd replayed more than once. "You don't owe anyone a version of yourself that doesn't fit anymore." The breaking point wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting. No slammed doors. No sudden decision that solved everything. It was quieter than that. It was the moment Maya admitted to herself that staying the same felt heavier than the risk of change. She opened her laptop again and wrote an email to her advisor. She didn't overthink it. "I think I need to talk. I'm scared, but I don't want to keep pretending I'm fine." She hit send before she could talk herself out of it. Her heart raced afterward, like she'd jumped off something high and was waiting to feel the impact. She lay back on her bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the city outside. A car alarm chirped. Someone's footsteps passed in the hallway. Life kept happening. Maya didn't feel brave. She felt exposed. But beneath the fear, there was something else. A thin, stubborn thread of relief. For the first time, she wasn't running toward an image or away from judgment. She was standing still, facing herself. And even though it hurt, even though it was uncomfortable and uncertain, she knew one thing with clarity she hadn't felt before. She couldn't go back to pretending. The meeting with her academic advisor wasn't dramatic. No speeches. No sudden clarity. Just a small office with a window that looked out over a parking lot, and a woman who listened more than she talked. Maya sat in the chair across from her, hands folded in her lap, feeling oddly nervous even though she hadn't done anything wrong. "I feel like I'm wasting time," Maya said. "Like everyone else knows where they're going, and I'm just stuck." Her advisor nodded. "Most people who look certain are just good at hiding doubt. You don't sound stuck to me. You sound honest." That word stayed with Maya. Honest. They talked through options slowly. Not big life overhauls. Small shifts. A lighter course load. An internship that focused on community work instead of corporate pipelines. Time to explore without turning it into a crisis. "You don't have to decide your whole life this semester," the advisor said. "You just have to take the next step." Maya left the office feeling lighter, not because her future was solved, but because it didn't feel like a trap anymore. A week later, she started volunteering again with the small business outreach group. She sat at folding tables in borrowed spaces, helping people set up websites and online listings. A barber who wanted more walk-ins. A woman who ran a home bakery and didn't know how to price her work. A retired couple trying to sell handmade furniture. None of them asked who her dad was. They asked practical questions. They laughed when things went wrong. They thanked her in ways that felt earned, not assumed. One afternoon, as she packed up her laptop, the woman from the bakery smiled at her. "You're really good at this. You explain things without making people feel dumb." Maya froze for a second. Then she smiled back. "Thanks. I like helping." On the drive home, the compliment replayed in her head. Not because it fed her ego, but because it felt true. At home, life settled into a new rhythm. Her mom had good days and slow days. Her dad still worked long hours, but he came home earlier when he could. Sometimes they ate dinner together. Sometimes they didn't. It felt normal in a way Maya hadn't noticed before. One evening, her dad knocked on her door and leaned against the frame. "You free?" he asked. "Yeah." They sat at the kitchen table with mugs of tea. The light over the stove flickered slightly, a bulb that needed replacing. "I wanted to tell you something," her dad said. After that deal fell apart, a few people reached out. Some support. Some criticism. Some silence. Maya listened. "One thing became very clear," he continued. "I don't want you anywhere near rooms where people measure your worth before they hear your voice." Maya swallowed. "I don't either." He nodded. "Good. Then we agree." They sat quietly for a moment. "I'm proud of you," he said finally. "Not for how you handled that meeting. For how you're handling yourself now." The words landed gently but deeply. Maya felt them settle somewhere solid. The semester ended without fireworks. Her grades were fine. Not perfect. Fine felt good enough. She lined up a summer internship with a nonprofit focused on digital access in underserved neighborhoods. It paid modestly. It mattered. On her last day of finals, she sat in her car in the campus parking lot, hands resting on the steering wheel, feeling tired in a clean way. The kind that came from effort, not avoidance. Her phone buzzed. A news notification popped up. Hale Group under internal review after compliance issues surface. Maya read the headline once, then turned her phone face down. She didn't feel satisfaction. She didn't feel anger. She felt detached. The story had already served its purpose in her life. It had forced her to look at herself. She didn't need to stay tied to it. She drove home with the windows cracked, letting the late spring air fill the car. The city looked the same. Traffic lights. Gas stations. People moving through their own complicated days. At a red light, she caught her reflection in the rearview mirror. She looked the same. But her eyes felt steadier. That night, she wrote in her journal, something she hadn't done consistently in years. "I thought I needed to prove I belonged. Turns out, I needed to decide where I belong." She closed the notebook and set it on her nightstand. Maya didn't have a perfect plan. She still had moments of doubt. She still felt the weight of expectation sometimes, especially when strangers recognized her last name. But now, when that happened, it didn't define her. She had a small win. She had chosen herself in a quiet, unremarkable way. No applause. No revenge. Just alignment. Before turning off the light, she checked her phone one last time. A message from Tasha. "You seem different lately. In a good way." Maya smiled softly and typed back. "I think I finally started listening to myself." She set the phone down and lay back, the room dark and calm around her. Tomorrow would bring its own worries. Its own questions. But for the first time, Maya felt prepared to meet them without shrinking. Sometimes, the most powerful changes don't look like victories from the outside. They look like someone choosing their own worth, quietly, and refusing to give it back. And if you've ever felt measured, underestimated, or pushed into a version of yourself that didn't fit, Maya's story might sound familiar.